What's up, guys? Welcome back to the MontyVerse. Today, I will be doing my spoiler review for Pixar's Lightyear, and joining me is a very special guest, his first time on the MontyVerse, and a Pixar aficionado, a Pixar trivia champion. Joining me is Jack. What's up, Jack?
Oh, I am so happy to be here. I messaged you as soon as I thought of this. I thought, if you're doing a Lightyear review on the MontyVerse, you got to bring me into this.
Oh, of course. You are a Pixar. You are more so than even Nikki are a Pixar expert.
Well, I don't know if we can go that far.
Oh, I will go that far. After seeing her most recent tier list, I will go that far. As to say
fair
this.
enough.
But yeah, Lightyear. I kind of gave my brief thoughts on it in a previous video. I really enjoyed it. What were your general thoughts on the film before we kind of really get into the spoilers of it?
So I feel like I should preface this by saying that I don't really have the same connection to the Toy Story franchise that a lot of other people do. I know a lot of people hold the Toy Story films in really high regard when it comes to Pixar, but I myself find that the second one is the best, and then the other three are somewhere in the middle range of Pixar. So I was decently excited going into Lightyear, as I am for every Pixar movie. I always hope that they're going to be good. I was really not expecting Lightyear to be as good as this was, though. And I have been so shocked by some of the reviews that have come out and seeing that the reception is not as positive as I would think it should be, because this movie knocked my socks off. I loved Lightyear.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting how a lot of people approach it, because Nikki had a very interesting point of view, and you have a completely different point of view from her and me. Like, she looked at it kind of looking at it as the Toy Story franchise. You're saying you have not the strongest connection to the Toy Story franchise. You are a big Toy Story 2 guy, would be your favorite amongst them. And me, I kind of looked at it divorced from the whole Toy Story franchise entirely. I went into this looking at it like, hey, I purged those movies from my mind when I went to go see this. Mm-hmm. So it's really interesting how everyone approached this film going into it. And I really loved it as well. It's what I expected while not being what I expected at the same time.
I agree with that.
One interesting thing I will say is the pacing was great right off the bat, but I didn't expect the story to begin with so much time travel, I should say.
I was really happy about that. Though. Yeah. I thought that I loved the movie all the way through, but I thought that first third where Buzz is doing all of the time travel, where we're seeing him go through all of these different flight patterns and seeing time pass on this planet, that to me was the most compelling part of the film. And that was where I thought the strongest emotional beats came in, which is something that I'll probably talk about a little bit later, but that I thought really actually played into the film's strength.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I really ended up loving it. I guess what the point I was trying to make is from the trailers and kind of from just my general knowledge of how movies usually play out, I expected the big, first act twist to be like, oh, he goes on one trip, and when he comes back, all of this time has passed, instead of it being this gradual 4-year at a time, jump and jump and jump and jump. And I really liked it because it was different, and it was something that kind of really helped to reinforce the theme of the movie. So, yeah, I'm in full agreement with you. That first act, while I wasn't expecting it, I really much enjoyed it a lot.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that. I thought the relationship between Buzz and Alicia was phenomenal, and I liked that they kept it throughout the film. They kept that undertone. She always felt like she was sort of present in Buzz's world because in many ways she still is. Yeah.
And what I really liked is there's just the story is told extremely well. Like, whenever he comes back, it's not like in his mind all he's focused about is the mission. So every time he jumps, we're with him. Like, we're in his perspective, we're in his point of view, and he's always thinking about the people and her. But when he comes back, she's not there solely obsessed about when he's going to come back, because she's moving on. She's living her life.
And she has a life on this planet now.
Yeah. Yeah, so thinking back on it, the more I was thinking about it over the weekend, I really liked that, because it's not like, he comes back and everyone's scrambling like, oh, when is he going to come back? When is he going to come back? It's like, no, everyone's kind of moving on,
And they know that he's
going
to be back in 4 years, and there's no point in trying to send another mission, because if Buzz comes back successfully, then they could potentially strand someone in space or on this planet. So it makes sense that in that 4-year time period, they would be trying to move on and live their lives as much as they could.
Yeah, I mean, and it's so crazy because after that first act, the second and third acts feel so different, but it just when you look at it as a whole, the whole fits together perfectly. But we kind of go from this like interesting, very fast paced, like rapidly moving machine to this second act where we establish the new environment of this planet, and kind of you introduce Izzy, the daughter, the granddaughter, I'm sorry, and the recruits played by Taika Waititi, who plays, I don't know who the third one is. I don't know who plays
It's blanking out right now. I'll know it for the next Pixar trivia that Nikki does, though.
All right. Yeah, and I just, it turns into this like really this love letter to science fiction in a lot of ways for me. The whole movie as itself feels like, as someone who's like a really big sci-fi guy, in terms of like movies and video games, and I've just caught so many of the references. I know that when we did our trailer reaction, Zach caught right away that Zurg's robots were essentially B-18 battle droids from Star Wars.
Yeah.
Which essentially is true, but there's so many of those things throughout this movie that I really loved. Like, there are pistols straight from Halo. The Lightyear armor, the Space Ranger armor, is essentially Mjolnir armor from the Halo franchise. There's references to Metroid video games like Samus and stuff. There's references to the Alien franchise. One thing that I really like that I want to talk about is the future that they live in seems to be like the Gene Roddenberry perfect utopia future. Like his idea of this utopian future where humanity has evolved past, gender, race, any conflict that's superficial. And we still struggle as people because we still have the shortcomings of humanity, but we've evolved past squabbling over our appearances. And I really like that this movie seems to be set in that kind of utopic future.
Well, and that's kind of one of the things that I really appreciated about it as well, was just it's weird because the movie establishes itself very early on. Like, literally the first thing in the movie is saying that this was a movie that in the universe of the Toy Story franchise was released in 1995. This is the movie that Andy saw that made him obsessed with Buzz Lightyear. Yet somehow it also, and then what's great about it is that it works as both a 90s space adventure movie, but also as something that reflects our current time period and reflects 2022. Seeing, this same-sex relationship between Alicia and her wife, but also seeing that she still has a kid and she has a granddaughter. And just seeing that is just something that is generally accepted is really nice to see on screen, but also to think about what a progressive what a progressive sort of tone is mixed with the tone of the 90s action movie and the 90s space films.
Yeah, because it's played just like it's another day. Like it's the only time it's ever addressed out of just natural conversation is when she's like, "Oh, I met someone," and he's like, "Oh, you how, like, who is she, or where did you meet her?" Because Buzz already just knows that she's a lesbian or she's bisexual. They didn't really confirm which it is, but it's just, and everyone's okay with that, and it's just a natural conversation. It's no a conversation that needs to be had or a very special episode of Pixar. It's just like, this is life.
Yeah,
this is normal.
I like that. I like it more so when movies don't really address it and like have some sort of grand importance that I feel like honestly Disney has sometimes been guilty of, like especially with Beauty and the Beast, where they were like, this is the first openly gay character in a Disney movie, or in Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker, we're like, we're gonna show two women kissing on screen for a second that we can edit out in countries that don't accept LGBTQ communities. Like, I like that this movie just puts it as part of its world.
Yeah, it doesn't, and by all means, correct me if I'm wrong because I'm a straight white man, but it doesn't condescend, and I feel like when they do things like in Star Wars, like in the Rise of Skywalker, when they hyped up that kiss, and it was just two people kissing in the background for like 1 second, it's almost like a condescension to the LGBTQ plus community, whereas this it just feels like we're just like everybody else, and that's how it should be.
As a gay white man, it was condescending.
Yeah,
And I appreciated this movie a lot more that it just wasn't.
yeah, because and that's always been the future that Gene Roddenberry, all the way back in the '70s, has always pictured humanity to get to, and the fact that we're feels like further back from it than we were in the '70s is pretty crazy. But I like how this movie references that, because it's something that, again, it's just a really big thing in the science fiction community that I really appreciated. But on top of that, this movie introduces a lot of fun new characters, and I don't think we can go any longer without referencing probably one of the best characters Pixar has created in a very long time, which is Sox the Cat.
Sox the Cat is incredible. Like, I'm trying to think of any Pixar character that's kind of on his level. Like, the one that comes to my mind most readily was like Doug from Up. But even then, Sox is just, I don't even know what to say about him. He's just the most lovable, funny, like, character that I've seen from a kids movie in a while.
I was so worried watching the trailer. I'm like, oh, this is gonna be like a super jokey, like dumb character.
This is gonna be the character that they forced in to sell toys.
Yeah, and I walked into this like caring a lot about like Sox is so endearing. He plays it so straight, and he's so endearing, and he's so likable, to the point where when like Sox, like it has that moment where you think he died. I'm like, oh my god, no. I like turned to Nikki and I'm like, no.
I was so much more invested than Sox than I was in any other character.
Yes. When it's to the point where we barely spent any time with the future Sox, and when the future Sox was killed, I had the most visceral reaction I think I've ever had in a movie theater in a very long time. But yeah, Sox was great. And speaking of Sox, one of the best characteristics of Sox that I love is essentially his onomatopoeia like aesthetic, like the fact that whenever he processes something, like he makes the noises instead of like when he's like, oh, I need to compute this, beep boop, beep boop, beep boop, or like, oh no, I need to cut this open. Scissors are like cut. Like I love the sound design of this movie because a lot of robots do that. Whether it's like the Zurg bots that just go Zurg, Zurg.
That was a great touch. I really appreciated that.
Yeah, it definitely helps it to stand out, and it helps it to feel so different from the Toy Story franchise, which really helped me to view this movie as its own thing, which to me it very much feels like.
Well, and that's actually also, I think, part of it was that it does work as part of the Toy Story universe. But the thing that I do appreciate is that you could cut out that, like, that text at the beginning that this was Andy's favorite movie and just present it.
Yeah.
And I think it would work just as well.
Let me run something by you because this is a question that a lot of people have been asking, and this is a critique that a lot of people have been having, and I have my own personal like thoughts on this. The fact that this movie was made in 1995 and yet it looks so good, and it has all of these like perfect computer generated like stunts, and in my mind I'm like, yes, I think we're watching the movie from 1995, but I think we're watching it and we're supposed to use our imagination the same way that Andy used his imagination seeing it for the first time. Because in my head, I'm watching it the way that Andy watched it the first time.
Well, and the other thing is that when you're a kid, you think that stuff that doesn't look as good as it actually does looks incredible.
Yes.
Like, I have gone back and seen some of the old stuff that I used to watch as a kid that was 3D computer animated, and it looks like shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
And in
I
your
thought
mind, it
this
looks like
was
great.
so good when I was like 5 or 6. And so I'm sure that, the movie Lightyear in 1995 probably doesn't look as good as it does now, but I think that we're seeing it the way that Andy saw it.
Yeah. Yeah. That was my big thing. And I'm glad that you kind of see it that way too, because it's just the whole point of Toy Story and Pixar and just these movies is to kind of just bring out your inner child and to kind of use your imagination a little bit. So that's kind of what I was doing. But again, I was really drawn into this movie. This
The
movie
other
really
thing is,
got me.
I'm pretty sure that it was also supposed to be like a live action movie that Andy saw. It wasn't supposed to be like an animated Buzz Lightyear movie that Andy saw
Yeah.
because like all the Toy Story movies are CGI, obviously.
Yeah.
But I think that this was supposed to be like actors uh in the universe of the Toy Story franchise. At least my read of it was like these are people playing the roles of Buzz Lightyear, but if we were to see everything in live action, these are like humans. They're not
Yeah.
drawings.
You know what? Since you said the word actors, let's touch on the actors of this film. Most importantly, let's save the big one for last. What did you think of everyone's performances? Because I thought Keke Palmer was and Taika Waititi were huge standouts for me. I thought they were great. Um, I thought the cast overall did a pretty good job there. It was a pretty solid performances all around. I don't think anyone was particularly bad. Peter Soon as Sox
As
obviously
Sox was the
steals,
standout.
yeah, steals everything. Everyone was pretty much serviceable. But what are your thoughts on the cast? And if you want to start on Chris Evans as well, you can go for it.
So I thought that the cast was very strong for the most part. I think Taika Waititi is going to be a controversial part of the film for sure because his humor is definitely not for everyone.
Yeah,
If you really like Taika, you're going to like what he does in this movie. But if you don't, it's a lot of the same humor that he does in his Thor movies, that he does in Jojo Rabbit. Uh, so I can understand why that character might be hit or miss for some people. I personally think that Taika Waititi is very funny, so I appreciated what he was doing. I think Keke Palmer is fantastic. I'm very excited that she is in 2 hopefully big movies this summer.
yeah.
Um,
The other
Peter
being
Sone
no.
was great.
Yeah,
Yeah. Um, James Brolin was interesting. I liked where he went ultimately, and we'll talk about what his character of Zurg is later.
yeah. It took me a second to place who it was because I didn't
Mhm.
even realize he was in the movie.
Like I have a problem when I read that it was James Brolin as Zurg. I couldn't not think of Jeff's dad from Community,
Yes, yes.
but I thought he was good. I thought he did a very good job of capturing and what an older version of Chris Evans would be.
Yeah, I mean, and that brings us back. I mean, James Brolin portrayed a great version of this Buzz who has essentially lost their mind, who has
Mhm.
essentially, without playing it over the top crazy, like it's a very nuanced, subtle craziness that shows like this guy has pretty much been by himself for
Mhm.
like 62 years.
And you know what it reminded me a lot of was
Wow, what's
Up.
that? Oh, you're right. You're right.
Like in a lot of ways, actually, because the most emotional part of the film came from a montage that was in the beginning. Uh, the like you have a main antagonist who is an old person who has lost their minds being alone for an extended period of time. It did give me a lot of similar vibes, and I think that was honestly probably part of why I liked it, even subconsciously. I was connecting it to Up.
Yeah, I mean, listen, me and you both have Up pretty high in our Pixar rankings. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
it might be number one for both of us.
I think it is.
Um, I think that and Incredibles is always one and two for me.
And
But
mine as well.
yeah, so I definitely see where you're coming from. And the themes are very similar in a lot of ways, different but the same. trying to say the same thing but different ways for people who are different ages or at different points in their lives.
Exactly.
Really.
And that's part of the magic of Pixar. And that was part of what I feel like has not necessarily been missing from their previous movies, but what I think has turned into more of a formula. And I feel like this kind of broke away from the Pixar formula that we've been seeing in their previous outings. I have like a whole rant that I've talked to people about this, but watching Onward, Soul, and Luca back to back, all three of those movies have the exact same emotional beat. And it really annoyed me when I picked up on it because it felt like they were recycling the same thing over and over again. It's always the main character reflecting on their relationship with the side character while sad music plays and they start to cry right before the intense climax that's about to take place. It happens in all three of those movies. And the second I picked up on it, I couldn't unsee it. But this movie doesn't do that. And I really appreciated that because I was worried it was going to.
Yeah. I mean, I personally was worried that it was going to be like a cash grab. It was going to be an IP film, and there wasn't going to have that strong Pixar theme that I'm used to in a lot of my favorite Pixar movies. That you know what I'm talking about, like the way that Pixar is able to take one theme and stretch it throughout an entire movie subtly to by the time you kind of pick up on where this film is going with it, it hits you in a very impactful way. And
yet you can also distill it into a certain scene.
Yes. And this movie does that extremely well, which surprised me in the best way possible. It was a great surprise. That theme of essentially like living your life and kind of not being able to, move on and not focus all your life on, work or your goals too much. Don't it's essentially like Ferris Bueller. Like life moves fast sometimes, you got to sit back and enjoy it a little while.
Or you're going to miss it.
Yeah. But this film impressed me in a lot of ways. I know we talked about the fast pace, but what I really did enjoy was while this movie does move quickly, there are a few tiny moments that just kind of hit the brakes hard and pause for like a couple of seconds that I think are so well done, and I want to talk about them. In particular, the scene where they lose the crystal, and you have that moment of Buzz like defeated, hanging his head in the desert area, and you have that puff of smoke come out of his mouth. And
so pretty.
It not only was it so like perfectly staged, like I just loved the look of it all, but I just think that those moments help the movie breathe, because when you're moving so fast, I think it's hard for you to identify with the characters if you don't have those little moments where they could just kind of like this Buzz in particular is essentially like Maverick from Top Gun, like especially when we meet him in the beginning of the movie. He's like, I can do anything, I'm the best, like I'm so crazy and excellent and I'm perfect. And then to kind of see him like hang his head like that and to kind of see him essentially come to terms with getting his like failing the mission again, failing the mission a third time, and kind of him accepting his humanity and him accepting like, hey, I was wrong. Like I've been doing things the wrong way, which surprisingly is the opposite message of Top Gun Maverick, a movie that came out like a month or 2 months before this one did, which is essentially like, nah, just keep doing it.
Nah, Tom Cruise is cool, and if you disagree, you're wrong.
Like, I could kick everyone's ass. I'm the best. This Buzz learns his lesson, and I found it so hilariously ironic that his journey...
Unlike Top Gun Maverick, this Buzz does not dunk on the planet he lives on.
Yes. He doesn't dunk on the planet. Like, he learns that he needs, like... the new generation and chooses to work like he's fallible. He accepts that he's fallible, and I'm like, this is hilarious.
And he sees what he can become.
Yes, yeah, and he sees like oh my god, like this is what I'm gonna be if I continue down this path. So I had to point out that similarity because it just was probably my only complaint with Top Gun Maverick was that Maverick was perfect and Maverick is always perfect.
Mhm. I did appreciate that this movie actually gave Buzz character and gave him growth. Like he has the very clear want versus need that defines his character arc.
Yeah. And I think that's when Evans shines through the most in this performance. Because in the beginning, you could tell that he did a lot of, I don't want to say like mimicry or just, copying of Tim Allen's performance as Buzz. But that's really where we get the Buzz that we're used to from the Toy Story. And there's a lot of like copying of cadences and the voice is and he's projecting the same way that Tim Allen does.
And there are a lot of nice little references to Toy Story in there. I did think I appreciated like those little nuggets that were in there, like his first line being word for word what he says when he is on Andy's bed in the original. We'll talk a little bit more about Zurg later, but I like that they kind of pull the rug out from under the people who think they know exactly what this is going to be.
Yeah. Yeah, we will talk about Zurg later because I think I fooled myself on Zurg, but there are a lot of callbacks to Toy Story, and obviously this is a movie that's supposed to be a tentpole franchise movie from Andy's 1995. So we do get the catchphrases, and we do get like, oh, this is where he gets his arm laser from, and this is where the jetpack comes from. By the way, if there a jet button is a jetpack, just always eject. Always eject. Like Keke Palmer's character's main fear is floating into the nothingness of space. You have jetpacks in your planes. Just use the jetpack.
That being said, when he hit the button and the wings popped out, my audience went nuts.
That was cool. It was very cool. That whole like moment where it was like Zurg and Buzz are hitting each other, and it's like Zurg's catchphrase, Buzz's catchphrase, arm laser, jetpack, and I'm like, yeah, that was cool. Yeah. That whole fight scene was really cool.
Back to the mimicry they were talking about, they literally almost shot for shot, but definitely action for action, recreate that bit from the Toy Story 2 video game where Buzz flips over Zurg and fires the lasers at him. And I was just like, it's such a small touch, but it just shows how much research and effort and care Angus MacLane and his co-writer put into the movie.
Absolutely. There's so many little details in this movie. Like not only for Buzz, not only for Toy Story, but I challenge anyone who's like a hardcore science fiction fan to just look throughout this film. There's a lot there. Like we can't go over it all, but there's a lot of callbacks to many franchises, not just Toy Story and Buzz Lightyear, but there are that as well. It's just such a very detailed job on this movie. Yeah, and speaking of Zurg, you're right, we did get a little twist. We did get a little third act twist with Zurg. See, when I had mentioned that I had detached myself from the Toy Story franchise watching this, so in my mind, I thought Zurg was going to end up being someone like Abraham Frenson, like the rookie from the beginning. I was just like, oh man, what's the twist going to be? Who's Zurg? Zurg knows Buzz. And then Nikki's like, you like, it's his dad. We know this from Toy Story 2. And I'm like, oh, I forgot. I'm like, well, don't ruin it.
No, this second that Zurg showed up on the screen, I leaned over to my friend who I was seeing with us, like, it's his dad. And then when they were like doing the whole reveal, I was sitting in my seat, like kind of like resigned. I was just like, it's his dad. It's his dad. It's his dad. We know it's his dad. Oh, it's not his dad.
It's not his dad, but they did give us that little like, he's like, Dad? Mm-hmm. He's like, nah, I'm you. Just joshing. He's like, I'm just joshing you, dude.
Nah, just playing.
But that was cool. Apparently, I don't know. I don't remember. I didn't rewatch the scene from Toy Story 2 before we did this, but apparently it's not correct continuity-wise. But do you happen to know if like, because apparently it the line is like, I am your father, like Star Wars. I don't know.
Yeah, it is literally line for line. Like Zurg said, Buzz like, you killed my father, and then Zurg says, no, Buzz, I am your father.
You know what? I
And
like
like
this better.
it's literally just a joke in that
Yeah.
movie. And I
Yeah.
and I honestly like, even though technically it does break that canon, I don't care because that part of Toy Story 2 is literally just the gag because you've seen Star Wars.
Mm, yeah. I think this works so much better for the
Mm.
movie and for the story. I got a little nervous when they introduced like triple time travel, and it's just like, oh man, Buzz from the future. I don't know, this could go bad, but I'm like, but the way they ended up doing it, I really loved. I turned to Nikki and I was just like, too much time travel. This is a day they're walking a tightrope right now, and but you know what? They handled it extremely well. Time travel tends to get messy when stories introduce it, and I thought this movie used it in a way that made you not think about it, but it helped the themes and the story and did everything they needed it to do without being a crutch on the movie itself.
And it made sense as well.
Hmm. Yeah, but yeah. So Zurg, and then we have the ending where we kind of get like all the stuff we know. We get Buzz in the updated Space Ranger suit. We get the
Mm-hmm.
new team. We kind of get that they're starting a new Space Ranger Corps on the planet. I'm sorry. Do you know? I don't, did they name the planet they were on? I don't remember.
Uh, I also don't remember what the name of the planet is. I could probably look it up again. Need to know this for trivia.
Yeah, but they kind of and that kind of where the movie ends, and we do get three post credit scenes. Two of them are jokes, and the third one was kind of the one that we all were expecting. I don't know. I was expecting at least. That's a tease for a sequel.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I know that I would want a sequel for this movie,
I would
and
love a
maybe
sequel for this.
absolutely. But we found out over the weekend that Lightyear is underperforming
Yeah.
at the box office, um, which is very surprising to me because I thought it was really good and I thought it had strong word of mouth. Especially when I came out of it and talking to other people who had seen it. Um, but apparently it's struggling a little bit at the box office, and I think it might have even lost. I didn't check the box office today, but it might have even lost to Jurassic Park or Jurassic World Dominion.
So
Um,
it did lose to Jurassic World Dominion. It was sort of a similar split actually back in 2015, where Jurassic World, the first one, was in its second weekend, and Inside Out got released. And that was a much. It was technically both movies made more, but this one was technically a bit closer. So it was like 58 point something for Jurassic World, and then 51 for Lightyear, which is kind of shocking to me. But also seeing the amount of theaters that Lightyear was playing in versus the number that Jurassic World was still playing in, it wasn't overly surprising. So I went to go see this movie in IMAX, which I think if you have the opportunity to go see, you should,
I did as well.
because the parts when it changes to IMAX, uh, my friend and I just got giddy every time it happened.
Very
But
beautiful. A lot of beautiful.
this IMAX theater that we saw it at had 4 showings a day. One of them was Lightyear. The other 3 were Jurassic World. So, and the fact that like Top Gun Maverick is still doing extraordinarily well at the box
Mhm.
office, and still taking a lot of theaters and people are going back to see that, I think is also taking away from Lightyear's box office. I think that nowadays a lot of parents are more willing to take their kids to go see PG-13 movies because the rating system is essentially dead. It doesn't really
And
mean anything.
well, I think another part of the problem is Disney Plus. I think is a problem because with things like Top Gun Maverick and Jurassic World, the average person, like not like guys like me and you or people in general who understand like movies and know what studio releases which films, but they don't really know when these movies are going up on streaming services or when they could see them at home. But everyone knows, but Lightyear is going to be on Disney Plus in a little
Mm-hmm.
bit. So I think parents, modern parents in a post-COVID world, are much willing to say, we'll wait 2 months, to see Lightyear. or at people who grew up with Pixar are more willing to go, I'll wait 2 months and I'll see it, on Disney
Yeah.
Plus. So I'm very curious to see how this does when it does get released on streaming as well, because I think this movie, it's a strong movie. Like
It's a
I'm very confused by the box office performance. The way you explained it extremely well, and it makes sense to me. But Jurassic World Dominion is such a dog shit movie.
so bad.
It's such a
It's
dog shit
so
movie.
bad.
This movie, this is a fun action movie. It stars Chris Evans. I thought that people would be into it,
And it's beautiful. Like this is like, I understand why Disney didn't want to do a day and date release with Disney Plus for this, because I would not have gotten anywhere near the same experience that I got had I seen this on my computer or on my TV.
I could probably rattle off like 5 or 6 moments in this movie that gave me chills watching it in IMAX, because we saw it in IMAX too, like you. There's the space jump scene where she has to jump between the two ships. There's the explosion that leads into that final fight between Buzz and Zurg, where they kind of explode out of Zurg's ship. There's that moment in the desert. There's so many. It's just a beautiful animated movie, like that lends itself so well to being seen on a big screen. And it's just I don't think that it does it service to just wait for it to be on Disney Plus. And this is coming from someone like me who's not like rushing to the theater to go see Pixar. I mean, the only movies I'll rush to the theater to go see are MCU movies and Top Gun Maverick, because Maverick's
I was gonna say, and Top Gun Maverick.
Top Gun Maverick, But I was so happy that sitting through this movie was such an absolute delight that I was so happy I got to see it. So yeah, I just don't know,
This is like, I think, the best outing that Pixar has had since Coco.
Yeah.
I think that it hits every beat that you are expecting it to hit and then some, but it also plays with what you might think is a generic kids movie formula in a way that makes it accessible to everybody. And that's kind of what Pixar is great at. I feel like, again, a lot of their recent output has been more skewed towards kids, and when it's not really great.
Yeah.
But I think this is a great movie that appeals to both kid sensibilities, but also adults. And it is so technically brilliant that I think it should demand a theatrical experience.
I mean, there was not one moment I was sitting through this movie going, this is a good kids movie. I was just like, this is a good movie.
It's a good movie.
This is a very good movie. It's just, you're right about that, especially when the art styles and the stories, the past couple of Pixar movies, I just really haven't connected with at
the
all.
Sound design of this movie is also incredible, and again, that's part of the theatrical experience, is that full sound system, and hearing every intricacy is just, it's so well done.
It feels like, it's so weird because part of this movie feels like a 60s, 70s science fiction movie. Parts of this movie feels like a 2000 to 2019, science fiction movie. And parts of this movie feels like it was made in the 90s. It almost feels timeless in a lot of ways, which is ironic because it's a movie that deals with time travel. I just found myself bouncing through the decades when it comes to the way this film was structured. And it just shows you that Pixar could really bounce through the genres. Like this is for me a science fiction film, more than anything. So the way that they're able to do that and still shine, still make it feel like a top-notch Pixar film, still make it feel like a high-caliber movie, still have it feel like a technically sound and really great film all around, just shows you how good of a workplace that Pixar Studios is.
First and foremost, it is a science fiction movie, which I think is its biggest strength, because I was worried it was going to be too cheeky, too like, aha, see, it's Toy Story. but it has just the right amount of references
Yeah.
to the franchise for the people who love it. But it does also succeed at telling a wholly original story.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is very much a film divorced from most things Toy Story. There were moments where it felt like, okay, here's the time for the references, but besides that, this was its own thing, and I really liked what we got with it.
Yeah.
But Jack, do you have any other things that you want to touch on when it comes to Lightyear?
Yeah, it makes Toy Story retroactively worse because why would Andy want Buzz Lightyear when he could have socks?
I know, right? How does his sister not have a socks toy? Like, how is there not a socks toy in that household?
Mm-hmm. Like everyone would want socks after that movie.
100%. Socks for everybody. That's gonna be Toy Story, the prequel to Toy Story.
Honestly, if Toy Story 5 is just Woody finding a socks toy and them having an adventure together, I'm there. Like, I think that's what they need to do. Like Pete Docter, call us.
Call us
we'll
right
do this.
now. We'll write a story. We'll get Ryan Johnson involved.
Yeah,
it'll be a porg.
Zach will come into our meetings just to meet Ryan Johnson.
100%. But yeah, guys, that's Lightyear. Go see it. It's awesome. Jack, where can the people find you?
On Letterboxd. I don't have any other social media, but I have my Letterboxd. It's JMay658. Or you can see me reviewing movies, mostly with one-line jokes.
Awesome. And you guys know where to find me. I'm here on the MontyVerse, the socials, everything at the MontyVerse. We got a ton of stuff coming. But until next time, guys, stay versed.